Welcome demigods, monsters, Percy Jackson fans, mortals and immortals, to yet another marvelous video. The Percy Jackson and the Olympians book has been popular among young adults for decades. The adventures of a half-blood with dyslexia and ADHD through the world of Greek mythology, set in the modern world, have captivated the imaginations of fans across the world. So it was a piece of exciting news when Disney Plus came out with the news that a new Percy Jackson series based on the books was in the works, with the author Rick Riordan closely working with the creators. The widely awaited show premiered recently, and people are thrilled to see their favorite demigods battle monsters and go on quests on the screens. But does the show follow the books without making any changes? Are the adventures of Percy Jackson still the same as readers remember it? In today's video, we're going to take a look at the top differences between the Percy Jackson series and its source material, the books. So without further ado, welcome to Marvelous Video's Top Differences in Percy Jackson and the Olympians series. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Changes in character appearances. One of the major reasons that fans gave for the failure of the Percy Jackson movies was the change made to the appearances of the characters in the books. Annabeth was not blonde in the first movie, Grover was not Caucasian, and Percy did not have his iconic sea green eyes. So how does the series portray these characters? Well, the author has gone on record saying that the appearances of the actors playing the characters were not the main thing they were looking for when they were casting them, but the chemistry between the actors. That's why there are a lot of changes in appearances in the series as well. When it comes to the main characters, Percy Jackson has black hair and green eyes in the novel, while Walker Scobell, who plays Percy, is blonde with grayish-blue eyes. Annabeth Chase is Caucasian with curly blonde hair and gray eyes, but Leah Savage Jeffries is African-American with black hair and brown eyes. Grover Underwood is Caucasian with brown hair, but Aryan Simadri is of Indian-American descent with black hair. Moving on to the supporting characters, in the books, Chiron is Caucasian with brown hair and his lower half is that of a white stallion, while the actor Glyn Turman is of Edo descent with white hair, and his lower half is that of a black stallion in the series. Luke Castellan has sandy blonde hair and blue eyes, but Charlie Bushnell has dark brown hair and brown eyes. Aries in the book has black hair and fire for eyes, while Aries, played by Adam Copeland, has grayish-brown hair and gray eyes. Similarly, Poseidon has jet black hair and sea green eyes, but in the series, Toby Stephens has light brown hair and greenish blue eyes. Also, in the book, Echidna is a big fat lady wearing a denim dress. But in the series, Echidna, played by Suzanne Cryer, is a fairly skinny lady wearing a wool jacket and jeans. Percy Jackson's childhood. One of the biggest changes that the Percy Jackson series brought was the deep dive into Percy Jackson's childhood. We were treated to scenes of a young Percy seeing monsters like an automaton bull, a Pegasus, and other monsters. Percy's early days show us more of his mother, Sally Jackson, and the struggles she faced when taking care of a young half-blood in more depth compared to the books.
Is it?
Argus, the security director of Camp Half-Blood, is not featured in the Percy Jackson show. Many book readers felt that Argus, Camp Half-Blood's director of security, would be tough to adapt. The rationale for this arises from Argus's appearance in the books, which is that of a typical guy with eyeballs covering his body. It was stated shortly before the debut of Percy Jackson and the Olympians that, while appearing in the show's screenplay, Argus would not be included in the adaptation due to financial limitations caused by the high price of his design. The initial conversations between Mr. Brunner and Percy in the Percy Jackson books are different. Mr. Brunner's early chats with Percy in the original Lightning Thief novel include mentions of the Titans and Kronos, as well as the fight between them and the Olympian gods such as Zeus and Poseidon. This foreshadows various aspects of the Percy Jackson series' larger plot, albeit the sections in Episode 1 of Percy Jackson and the Olympians are altered slightly. In the show's early scenes, Mr. Brunner explains how the gods have intentions for Percy, which will soon become obvious to him. The show shortens Percy's museum visit. In the first episode of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Mr. Brunner and Percy have a different talk while on the museum trip to New York City from the school. The museum visit has been reduced in the Disney Plus tradition of The Lightning Thief, focusing on the battle between Alecto and Mrs. Dodds and Percy. In the first book, Percy is taken into the museum prior to being confronted by Alecto, but Mr. Brunner intervenes and hands Percy a weapon that turns out to be a sword. But in the first episode, Brunner hands Percy the weapon before Alecto strikes, which happens outdoors on the street, providing for a much faster-paced action. The Fates. In the Percy Jackson book series, Percy meets the Fates, beings who control the fates of every living being, while waiting for a bus along with Grover after being expelled from Yancey Academy. He sees them cutting a yarn, and Grover assumes this is an omen that shows that Percy will die. This scene is absent in the series. Instead, Annabeth is the one who sees the Fates after their accident at the St. Louis Arch, where Percy falls into the river. Not everything about Percy's life at Yancey Academy is shown in the TV series. The original tale of Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief depicts Percy's time at boarding school before his expulsion in more detail. In some scenes from the book, Percy wakes up in his room at the dorm and listens in on Mr. Brunner and Grover discussing Alecto's attacks as well as what is going to occur to Percy. However, these scenes are not included in the first episode of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, which jumps right from the reveal of Alecto to Percy's dismissal and his going back to his mother's flat. Gabe, Percy Jackson's stepfather, is not as abusive. Gabe Ugliano, who is the stepfather of Percy, differs between the original plot of Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief and the first episode of the TV series. The book implies that Gabe is abusive, and Percy's realization that he did not know how abusive his stepfather was, which includes a scene where Gabe lifts his hand and Sally flinches. However, episode 1 of Percy Jackson and the Olympians does not include any suggestions of Gabe's physical abuse tendencies, instead portraying Sally as having far more agency over her husband and Gabe as a deadbeat, humorous figure.
I'll live.
Percy Jackson thinks his father is deceased in the book, however, not in the show. The first episode of Percy Jackson and the Olympians portrays Percy's resentment of his father's absence despite the fact that he believes he is still alive. In the book that inspired the season, Percy thinks that his dad has died. This is a slight difference from the books, but it improves Percy's character and the overall arc he goes through with Poseidon, since it gives both of them a more heated dynamic when they meet for their initial encounter in the show. Gods' healing objects, Ambrosia and Nectar, are not in the Percy Jackson show. The gods' food and drink, Ambrosia and Nectar, are a recurring theme in the Percy Jackson books. These two items are utilized as demigod healing items and have the flavor of what the person consuming the meal or drink feels strongly related to, no matter what it is. However, Nectar and Ambrosia are not present in the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series. This might be to build stress to the story because Ambrosia and Nectar are capable of healing practically any damage, even though it has limitations, or the heavenly ingredients will be discovered later in the first season. In the Percy Jackson show, Annabeth and Percy's relationship is considerably altered. In the original Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief book, Annabeth is the character that shows Percy around Camp Half-Blood while taking him to different individuals and camp activities and giving him a crash course. In Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Luke Castellan takes on this position. Percy and Annabeth barely converse a few times before Poseidon claims him, which is a little departure from the book, where they already become acquainted before the claiming. Percy Jackson's dyslexia and ADHD are ignored in the program. An interesting truth regarding the beginnings of Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief is the fact that writer Rick Riordan created it for his son, who struggled to focus in school owing to dyslexia and ADHD. As a result, Riordan created a tale about Greek gods and monsters in which the main hero suffers from both diseases. Percy's ADHD was thought to be a result of his reflexes in battle, whilst his dyslexia was caused by his brain having been built for ancient Greek rather than English. Despite the fact that these two diseases are constantly discussed in the book, neither are mentioned explicitly in the show. The Percy Jackson show introduces a new concept, glory kleos. One of the most exciting aspects of the second episode of Percy Jackson and the Olympians was Luke introducing the Greek concept of glory called kleos. Luke informs Percy that acts of strength, missions, monster defeat, or normal skill will bring renown to the name of the demigod. This glory makes them more dangerous to monsters, more visible to the gods, and more strong in their skills. This is a brand new notion for Percy Jackson and the Olympians that did not appear in any of the previous books. Percy is not attacked by a hellhound before being claimed in the show. In episode 2 of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Percy is claimed by his father Poseidon immediately after overcoming Clarice and being victorious in Capture the Flag. This is also true in The Lightning Thief, with the exception of one significant difference. After playing Capture the Flag in the novel and achieving victory, Percy is assaulted by a hellhound called to camp by a fellow demigod. Chiron overcomes the monster, and Percy's father claims him. This part has been taken out of the show, most likely for pace considerations. In the book, Percy starts his quest after spending a few days at camp. In the original plot of Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, Poseidon claiming Percy provokes a more hostile reaction from the campers towards the hero. He stays another couple of days at camp, being challenged hard by Luke in practice because he is a Big 3 kid, while being disregarded by the majority of the other campers. The novel describes how Percy's first few days after being claimed were unpleasant before embarking on his journey. In Percy Jackson and the Olympians Episode 3, Percy embarks on his journey almost immediately.
Annabeth, let's go!
The Oracle's Prophecy. The sequence in Percy Jackson and the Olympians Episode 3, where Percy receives a quest from the Oracle, is almost identical to the book, with one slight exception. In the episode, the Oracle only appears as Gabe, Percy's stepfather, and delivers the prophecy. However, in the novel, the Oracle appears as Gabe and a couple of his buddies playing poker, and each of the men says a line from the prophecy. Percy's Quest Companions. In Episode 3 of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Chiron presents Percy with numerous companion possibilities for his adventure. They consist of Luke, Annabeth, Clarice, and other half-bloods. In the show, Percy clearly favors Annabeth rather than the other characters. This contrasts with the book, in which Annabeth expresses her willingness to join Percy on the quest. Riptide, Percy's Sword. The book focuses more on Percy's sword. The name of Percy's sword, Anucleusmus, or Riptide in English, is one aspect of the book that has not been discussed in the show. Also, following Percy's arrival at Camp Half-Blood, the book has a minor character arc in which he demonstrates his inability to find a blade that feels balanced in his hand after he returns Riptide to Chiron. This changes when he acquires Riptide once more, prompting Chiron to give him the blade permanently. None of this appears in the television series, once again most likely for pacing considerations.
I don't think these windows are supposed to... Oh no.
The bus fight with the Furies. Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief starts Percy's quest aboard a New York bus, where he confronts the three Furies. Percy uses Annabeth's cap to get by them before spinning around and vaporizing two of the Furies. The trio leaves the bus as Zeus tries to dispose of Percy by hitting the bus with lightning, while Alecto remains inside. This does not occur in Percy Jackson and the Olympians Episode 3, as Annabeth kills one Fury before the trio jumps out of the back window, resulting in a considerably shorter sequence. Meeting Medusa. The sequence in which Percy, Annabeth, and Grover visit Medusa's garden gnome emporium differs from the book in a number of ways. For one thing, the three immediately recognize Auntie M as Medusa, as opposed to the book's lengthy unraveling of the riddle. In addition, Alecto pursues Percy, Annabeth, and Grover to the garden gnome emporium in the show, which does not occur in the book. Upon reaching Medusa's lair, Medusa is swiftly revealed to have some variations. For starters, the character is a lot less bitter, furious, and malicious in the show, and is portrayed as a much more sympathetic character. Similarly, the combat scene that follows is more horror-based, with Medusa chasing the trio rather than action-oriented. Medusa further provides Percy with an agreement for betraying his friends in exchange for assistance in rescuing Sally, which is not a part of the book. Finally, Percy murdering Medusa by placing Annabeth's cap on her head is a new idea introduced in the show. Akida and Chimera. In the book Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, Akida and Chimera remain unknown until Percy, Annabeth, and Grover enter the St. Louis Gateway Arch. However, in the 4th episode of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the monsters are discovered on the train carrying the trio. This results in a brief action chase across the train before Percy, Annabeth, and Grover travel to the mentioned tourist site in the city. Athena's Punishment. In the 4th episode of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Echidna makes fun of Annabeth by saying that her mother is upset with her because of her unexpected behavior. This means that Echidna and Chimera can now enter the St. Louis Arch, which is shown as Athena's shrine, as vengeance for Annabeth's role in Percy's sending out Medusa's head to Olympus. This particular aspect of Athena and Annabeth's connection was not included in the original book, which adds to the show's story. The Chimera Fight. The final big difference between Percy Jackson Episode 4 and the source material is the main character's confrontation against the Chimera. In the book, Echidna and Chimera corner Percy at the very top of the St. Louis Arch, forcing him to confront the latter. Percy Jackson Episode 4 depicts Percy deceiving Annabeth and Grover into going without him and purposely attacking the monster. This not only demonstrates Percy's courage, but also lends a sense of significance to the end of the episode. Meeting Aries. In the books, the trio is at dinner without any money to eat when Aries shows up and talks to them. In the series, Aries shows up on a motorcycle while the trio is walking down a highway, and he tells them to meet at a diner further down the road. Furthermore, Percy and Annabeth are sent to a deserted amusement park to fetch Aries' shield. In the episode, Aries holds Grover with him as collateral to ensure that Percy and Annabeth do not give up their quest for the shield. This leads to various sequences with Grover and Aries, in which the former attempts to trick the latter into disclosing what he knew about Zeus's master bolt. This is a significant departure from the original story, in which Grover accompanied Percy and Annabeth to Waterland and assisted them in rescuing the shield from the amusement park. Percy's motivations for going on the quest. When Percy embarks on his journey in Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, he is unaware that his mother is still alive. Percy Jackson and the Olympians modified this by making his mother's protection his main purpose throughout the series. In the novel, Percy discovers that his mother is not dead from Aries as they leave for Las Vegas. This is a significant departure from the novels, as Percy was previously aware of his mother's fate because of Grover's conversation with the Cloven Council. Percy's power to talk to horses. In Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, a zebra is one of the animals carried by the truck. The book indicates that Percy can communicate with the zebras because they are very similar to horses, which Poseidon created in Greek mythology. However, Percy Jackson Episode 6 omits this sequence and has Grover speak to the animals, resulting in their release. Grover's theory about who the Lightning Thief is. Grover says at the end of Percy Jackson Episode 5 that he is aware of who stole Zeus's master bolt. In Percy Jackson Episode 6, he claims it was Clarice because he feels Aries knew more than the god of war is revealing. Grover hypothesizes that Aries could have nobody to protect other than his offspring and thus bestows the title of Lightning Thief upon Clarice. This new twist is an original subplot for the Percy Jackson television series, not from the book. The Lotus Eaters. As soon as they reach the Lotus Hotel and Casino, the trio realizes it is tied to the Greek story of the Lotus Eaters and vows not to touch the food. In the Percy Jackson book, Percy, Annabeth, and Grover discover the connection after they have already left the casino. Also, Percy and Annabeth do not feel the effects of the casino as strongly as Grover, who forgot his friends in the show. Augustus, a new character. Grover meets a satyr named Augustus in Percy Jackson and the Olympians Episode 6. The old satyr knew Grover's uncle Ferdinand and was seeking Pan, the god of the wild. Grover, on the other hand, recognizes that Augustus had been influenced by the Lotus Eaters' sorcery before he was affected too. This narrative is unique to the Percy Jackson TV show and was not in the novel. It is expected to emphasize the danger of the Lotus Eaters while also setting up future stories with Pan. Hermes' inclusion in the show. The group searches for Hermes in Percy Jackson Episode 6 in order to get assistance from the god of travelers in getting to Los Angeles. Hermes is located in the Lotus Hotel and Casino. This is a new tale for the program, as the book does not feature Hermes during this period. Rather, the book had Percy, Annabeth, and Grover visit the hotel to relax before continuing their journey west. Hermes' involvement in the show was intended to enhance his and Luke's friendship, which would be significant in later books, as well as to contribute to the world building of Percy Jackson and the Olympians Season 1. Hermess Car. In Percy Jackson Episode 6, Percy, Annabeth, and Grover leave the Lotus Hotel and Casino using Hermess Car, which differs slightly from the book. In Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, the three catch a cab and use one of the money-loaded Lotus cards to convince the driver to drive them all the way to Los Angeles. The use of Hermess Car in Percy Jackson Episode 6 serves to not only set up Hermes' desire to assist and get on Luke's good side, but also to speed up the show's timeline by magically transporting them to Santa Monica.
We'll be here when you get back.
Missing the summer solstice. The trio's failure to meet the summer solstice deadline is the most significant reveal in Percy Jackson Episode 6, and thus the biggest difference from the original novel. Their stay at the Lotus Hotel and Casino meant that Percy, Annabeth, and Grover did not find Zeus's bolt in time, and the gods were ready to fight. In the book, Percy arrives in Santa Monica with only one day till the deadline, and the changes made for the TV show are intended to heighten the stakes and urgency.
I think I gotta go meet my dad now.
The meeting in Santa Monica. One tiny addition to the Santa Monica scenario in Percy Jackson and the Olympians Episode 6 is that Percy expects to see his father there. The Nereid says that Poseidon waited for Percy but had to depart when the summer solstice arrived. In the original tale, Percy never expects to meet his father and believes the Nereid has only been waiting for him in Santa Monica.
I'm going to see this through.
You are released from your quest.
The Nereid's warning. Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief uses two conversations with the Nereid to warn him of the gifts. Percy fails to comprehend what the Nereid is saying before she leaves, leaving him and the readers perplexed about her warning. This incident does not appear in Percy Jackson and the Olympians Episodes 5 or 6, implying that potential twists about whatever gifts the Nereid mentioned in the book are not foreshadowed.
There. Missing our mummy, are we?
I know who you are.
Procrustes' defeat. Percy enters Procrustes' shop, knowing his past, and stalls him, which allows Annabeth to throw him onto one of his enchanted waterbeds using her invisibility cap. The bed entangles him, as it did with Procrustes' victims, letting the trio proceed. In the book, the children are unaware of Procrustes allowing him to lock Grover and Annabeth in the waterbeds. Percy then tricks Procrustes and traps him, killing him with Riptide before releasing Annabeth and Grover. The change made in the series simply reduces the amount of time the three spend in Procrustes' store in Percy Jackson Episode 7. Cerberus. Percy Jackson's 7th episode features Percy, Annabeth, and Grover barely escaping Cerberus, thanks to some tactics Annabeth learned from having a dog as a child. Cerberus is significantly more hostile in the show, with Annabeth just briefly soothing him before diverting him with a red rubber ball. In the novel, Cerberus is more gentle, befriending Annabeth and howling for her to return when she leaves after playing with the three-headed dog. Flashback of Sally and Poseidon. Percy Jackson Episode 7 features flashbacks that focus on Sally's difficulties with enrolling Percy in school. These flashbacks end in an exchange between her and Poseidon, which sheds light on the latter's struggling parental decisions. These scenes are not found in the Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief book, but the show included them to help expand on Sally's character and her connection with both Percy and Poseidon. Elesium and the Fields of Punishment. In the original book, Charon transports Percy, Annabeth, and Grover across the river Styx, where they discover Elesium and the Fields of Punishment in the underworld. Elesium is a paradise for heroes who have helped humanity throughout their lives, whereas the Fields of Punishment are where criminals and other evil people are placed. In Percy Jackson Episode 7, only the Fields of Asphodel were mentioned. Annabeth's early departure from the underworld. The key difference between the asphodel fields in the novel and Percy Jackson Episode 7 is that the souls there are bonded by roots. These roots indicate regrets for decisions someone made or failed to make in life. This distinction causes a significant shift in the book story as Annabeth starts to become rooted as well. The root of her remorse is not revealed, and Annabeth uses one of Poseidon's pearls to escape the underworld far sooner than in the book. The Master Bolt. Grover gets dragged to Tartarus when Percy steps in to save him after Annabeth departs the underworld. He then finds Zeus's Master Bolt in his bag and heads to Hades' palace. In the original book, Percy's backpack begins to feel heavier after Grover nearly falls into the pit and does not realize it is due to the bolt. Instead, Percy visits Hades when the god of the underworld informs Poseidon's son about the bolt's existence in his bag. Hades. When Percy gets to the god's palace, Hades, who is described in the book as being temperamental, calls in the Furies and other skeletal soldiers to face him. Hades demands the Helm of Darkness back violently, perplexing Percy. Percy, Annabeth, and Grover eventually discover Aries' deceit and use the pearls to flee before Hades murders them. In Percy Jackson Episode 7, various alterations to the Aries and Cronus storyline result in Hades being much more relaxed. Hades allows Percy and Grover in without guards or Furies and negotiates with them. After Percy reveals that Cronus took the bolt and Hades' helm, the god promises Percy, Grover, and Sally sanctuary if a conflict with Cronus is imminent. Percy rejects this, but promises Hades that he will receive his helm. Marvelous verdict. And we have come to the end of yet another marvelous video. It has been a roller coaster of a ride going through the differences between the Percy Jackson television series and the books. The presence of the author of the books in the making of the series shows them sticking to the source material, but the creators have made decisions to change parts of it. Only time will tell if these changes are for the better. So stay tuned for more exciting info from the lore of Percy Jackson. Which difference did you like the most? Was there anything specific from the book that you loved that did not make it to the show? Let us know all about it in the comments down below. And if you liked this video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button on your way out. It means the world to us when you help us grow. Until next time, guys, don't let the harpies catch you. Have a good one.